Canadians may be globally known for their politeness, but on this Pink Shirt Day, Brock University experts say that bullying is a prominent issue. In fact, statistics show that at least 20% of youth in Canada experience bullying. Pink Shirt Day promotes kindness and inclusion in the face of bullying, and here to join me in this conversation is Naomi Andrews, who is an associate professor of child and youth studies at Brock University. Thank you so much for joining me here today, Naomi.
Of course, thanks for having me.
Why don't we get right into it and talk about how important is Pink Shirt Day messaging?
It's really important. We all know that bullying happens, but it's something that can often kind of get brushed aside as, it's just happening. It's kind of this, rite of passage. Everyone experiences bullying. But I think Pink Shirt Day helps remind us that it's really not, right? That it really is a critical issue and we need to be paying attention to it.
And what about creating the lasting change that, really requires more than parents just encouraging their kids to wear a certain colored shirt?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's really more about, we can wear the shirt on the day and that's great. But what's really important is to actually promote healthy relationships and kindness among our children and among adults as well, right? Children look to the adults in their lives to know how to behave. And for us to adopt some of that messaging, some of that behavior is really important for kids to see.
And I think it's important to touch on what are some of the lasting impacts of bullying?
They can be really significant. So especially for youth who are kind of chronically bullied, we see impacts lasting well into adulthood. So things like mental health issues, depression, and anxiety. We've heard stories about children committing suicide due to bullying, things like that. But what I'll also note is that one of the problems that we see is that for bullies, there can be some advantages. We see some kind of social advantages even later in life. One of my colleagues, Dr. Volk, has done some work showing that those who perpetrate bullying go on to have more children. So we actually see, there are some of these advantages for those who perpetrate bullying, which is why they keep doing it.
It's interesting there. And so what would be the message there? How do we go about acknowledging that this is what research is showing us?
If we can understand why it's happening, right? It's not enough to just say stop bullying, right? Because the bullies are gaining from it. They're getting something from it. I think one of the ways that we can try to reduce bullying is to have, the whole culture understand or have the whole culture support the idea that bullying isn't okay, right? It has to come from the other peers themselves so that these people aren't getting some of those social advantages from it.
It's something that I speak a lot to my boys about, who are 8 and almost 11, and I've had them both come home and say, I was bullied by someone, and I have them explain to me what happened and what kind of words were used. And then I often say to them that, or put the question out there, I wonder what's going on at that person's home, or I wonder what's going on in their life to make them feel like it's okay to do this. And sometimes it makes my kids feel a little more empathetic as to why this could be happening. Is that something that, you kind of recommend to kind of cover it all?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think it's important for us to understand why people who are bullying might be engaging in that, right? They might, like you said, they might have other things going on at home that's causing them to, kind of lash out or things like that. But we do also need to support the victims of this, right? That, we can definitely show empathy for those who are perpetrating, but also say that it's not okay, right?
Absolutely.
They can have those struggles in their life, but also not treat other people in that way. So certainly increasing empathy across the board is really helpful, but also being able to empower those who are victimized and others who are maybe witnessing it or seeing it happen, that this type of behavior is just not okay.
And so instead of just, telling people, I don't want to say just kids or teens, adults as well, that they need to stop bullying and stick up for each other, how important is it to make sure that we're also getting all of this messaging through to adults?
It's really important. Yeah. Like I said, children and youth, right? They look to adults, they look to media, they look to people that they're seeing on their screens a lot of the time. And so we can come at it from the top down, right? And thinking about what adults are doing in these children's lives. And then, of course, we can also come at it from the level of the children themselves, right? From early ages to help children learn about how to have healthy, positive relationships with their peers.
Why don't we really break it down into some of the examples of bullying? Because now in our world with social media, there are so many people who are experiencing that side of things as well.
Yeah, and social media bullying, or we can sometimes call it cyberbullying, right? Bullying that happens in online spaces can be sometimes particularly painful and particularly a problem for a couple of reasons. One of them is because it really kind of follows the child home, right? When we think about bullying in schools, it used to be that might end, right? Once the child goes home, they're not with their peers anymore. That bullying can stop and they can have some space from it. But now we see that kind of bullying can kind of follow the person home on their screens, on their phones, through online means. And then it's also easier for people to be anonymous online. And so we see coming back to the idea of empathy, right? When we don't see people face to face, it's harder for us to have empathy. And so we actually see that acts of bullying can be more extreme in online settings because we're not necessarily seeing the person's reaction, right? We're not being able to judge that they might be really hurt by this. So that cyberbullying is really critical, especially for youth now, right? Who are on their screens constantly, who are online constantly and might be experiencing some of this.
And why don't we touch again just on some of those lasting effects of bullying that it can have on children?
Yeah, the lasting effects are really impactful. Even into adulthood, we see that youth who've experienced chronic victimization have higher rates of mental health difficulties, so things like anxiety, things like depression. Bullying can also really impact academic performance, right? So a lot of times for youth who might be victimized, they don't want to come to school, right? They don't want to spend time with peers who might be bullying them. And it's harder for them to do things like focus on their academics, right? Focus on their schoolwork. So we see that they may also struggle in school as well. So we kind of see the impacts across all areas of life.
Thank you so much for joining us today. That's Naomi Andrews with Brock University. And on this Pink Shirt Day, I think it's important that we all remember to be kind.